they gave me this list of 84 charges they wanted to arrest me for, because they made each separate hack a charge.
Right.
If they want to charge you 84 times, they have to arrest you 84 times. And then that means they have to caution you 84 times. But they only did it for half the charges, for 40 of the charges, because they could only hold me for 24 hours. So the time ran out. Yeah.
Because they'd arrested you too much. Okay, so Mustafa, obviously we've met you before. We've done a video previously together. But for anyone that doesn't know who you are, or a new listener or a new watcher, could you introduce yourself and explain what you're known for?
Sure. So when I was about 15, 16, I was involved with a hacking group that hacked into various governmental and corporate organizations. And I was arrested for it. And that's one of the things that I'm known for.
And I think what we'll do straight away now is get into that in a lot more detail. But just going back to the beginning, can you tell me what your childhood was like?
Sure. So I was actually born in Baghdad in Iraq. And we moved to the UK, to London, about the year 2000. And I lived in southeast London in Peckham, in a council flat. It was a fairly deprived area. I kind of just very naturally became interested in computers. Like my dad bought a computer and I spent a lot of time on it. At first, it was kind of like playing online games, but then I started becoming more interested in the kind of technical side of it as well, in programming.
And that's quite. So, how old were you here?
I moved to the UK when I was 6.
Yeah.
And so I started like playing around with computers when I was very young, when I was 7 or 8.
Okay. And did you seek out other groups of people that were doing the same thing at this age, sort of 8 or 9, still very young, or was it something that you were just doing at home as next to your schoolwork and stuff like that?
No, it was just something I was doing on my own. I didn't really have any friends that did it. Like all the people that I knew were online, but they were older than me as well. You couldn't tell I'm an 8 or 9-year-old online. Like it's just text, right? As long as you have good grammar, you can't really tell like you're a kid.
They probably would have been quite surprised if they realised they were interacting with an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
How did you start interacting with other people that were doing things under the banner of Anonymous?
Before I kind of joined Anonymous or became part of the movement, I was involved in this online chat room that was focused around internet activism. Something called the Internet Forum or something like that, which was like a cabal of companies trying to make the internet less free. And people were discussing how do we protest against that, and they were saying let's do things like petitions or websites to inform people. And then there was someone in the chat room saying let's actually try and do something illegal to launch what's called a denial of service attack to the companies supporting this. The denial of service attack is basically kind of like a attack that you would do against a company or a website to shut it down. You basically flood that website with so much traffic or so much requests that it becomes overloaded and shuts down. It's kind of like an online version of a physical sit-in. Like back in the 40s or 50s in America, black people were doing physical sit-ins in restaurants to protest racism. This is kind of like a more benign version of that, like an online version. For example, when Anonymous did a denial of service attack against PayPal and MasterCard and WikiLeaks, that was to protest them denying access to WikiLeaks. They were blocking donations to WikiLeaks. I kind of realized that hacking could actually be a powerful tool to kind of expose wrongdoing or to kind of shift power away from people or to expose people in power.
And how old were you say you were here?
I think I was just like maybe 13 or 14.
So from an early age, did you have this sense of moral obligation towards hacking?
Yeah, I think I started developing that when I was a teenager.
You ended up setting up your own group, didn't you? Is it okay to call them a group? I don't want to use
the wrong LulzSec is a group.
No, LulzSec is a group. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through LulzSec and what that was?
So LulzSec, unlike Anonymous, was a private group. It wasn't like something that anyone can claim to be. One of the major hacks we did was a US military contractor called HB Gary Federal. We leaked 70,000 emails from them because they were threatening to kind of expose, in their own words, the leaders of Anonymous.
American military contractors, you would have imagined they'd have some of the best security.
Yeah, not really. They were a cybersecurity company, so you would have thought they would have a good security. And the CEO used the same password everywhere. Like, he used the same password for his PayPal account as he did for his World of Warcraft account. And so that allowed us to gain access to all of his accounts.
So had you wanted to, would you have been able to take control of his PayPal account? You know, from the finances in there, could you have withdrawn money or sent money elsewhere had you wanted to?
Yeah, definitely. Someone in the group actually, wiped his iPad remotely because we were able to log into his Apple account.
I mean, I'm quite bad for having various like the same password in lots of places, but you'd think somebody in control of that kind of a company might have been a bit more clued up.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess he's probably got quite a bit of resentment towards LulzSec these days.
Yeah. But we follow each other on Twitter now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I think he did come to London once and kind of meet with another hacker that was in the group as well.
Oh,
so
no hard feelings. Were there any other major events or major hacks during a time at LulzSec that you can remember?
We hacked Sony 7 times, for example.
7 times?
Yeah. Like,
what did they do to you?
Sony was interesting because they were kind of like a classic hacker target. There wasn't specifically one thing that they did wrong. It was like a series of things. For example, they injected like malware to music CD-ROMs that would take over your computer to prevent you from copying that music.
Right.
To enforce copyright. And at the time, they were suing this hacker who managed to jailbreak the PlayStation 3, I think, called Geohot. So they were kind of like a very anti-hacker, natural kind of target. And during the summer of 2011, I think they were hacked 23 times. And 7 of them was us. And then there was this other guy who hacked them like 6 times. So it was kind of like a competition to see who could hack them the most between us and this other guy that was also hacking them quite a lot.
And what were you doing to them with the hacks?
It was like various things, like, because Sony's quite a big organization, so they had many different businesses. So we, for example, we hacked like the Sony music website, I think. We hacked like the PlayStation developer website. Those various different hacks, various databases of usernames and passwords.
And was your purpose to make them look stupid, or to just slow them down, or to cause them a little bit of time and money? What were you kind of hoping to achieve with the hacks?
A bit of a mix, really. And a lot of it was actually, they weren't taking security seriously. It's like, if you would email them, if we discovered the attacks and we just emailed them to say, hey, you've got an issue, they won't take it seriously. So like, the only way that they would take it seriously is if they actually get hacked, and it creates a press disaster for them. Only then they say, okay, we're losing confidence in our customers because they've seen that we've been hacked so many times. Only then do they take security seriously.
Let's get into leading up to your arrest then. Can you sort of tell us how that happens? At this point, just before you're arrested, are you starting to sense anything? Are you feeling nervous about anything? Are you feeling like people are looking for you? Or are you just business as normal, getting on with your life?
Yeah, I mean, things definitely did feel hot because I think a few weeks before I was arrested, there's another guy in the UK that was arrested. His name was Ryan. He wasn't directly involved. He wasn't directly a part of our group, but he was associated with us. He ran some of our chat rooms. And so it definitely felt they were onto us to some extent. Before I was arrested, I actually decided to quit. Not necessarily because I thought I'd be arrested, but because I wanted to kind of move on with my life. It just became a bit boring to some extent. And
how old were you at this point?
16.
16, right, okay.
And a part of it was kind of this, at one point, we became so popular that we weren't doing any hacks ourselves anymore. It was just other hackers sending us hacks, or sending us leaks to publish.
Right.
We became more like a publishing kind of group, more than a hacking group. And one of the things that we were asked to publish was this documents from the Arizona Police Department. It was called the Arizona Department of Public Safety, because there was this police officer that just used the password 123456. So this guy called Jeremy Hammond managed to hack into it, download all the emails, and he would give me a press release to put with the leak, and I didn't really read it. I just posted it, and part of the press release says something like "off the pigs," and it was like, that's like kill cops. And I didn't really read that. I just posted it, and I thought, that was it's going a bit far. I'm not necessarily a fan of cops myself, but I don't want to publish something that says kill cops necessarily.
Okay, so it was feeling a little bit hot. The guy from your group had just been arrested. So then how does it progress onto your arrest?
I'm trying to remember if I was the first person that I was arrested or the second person. Well, actually, I wasn't the first person. I was the second person, because there was actually someone in the US was arrested, but he was an informant. So we didn't know he was arrested, and no one knew that he was arrested.
Ah, okay.
He became an informant after he was arrested.
So they flipped him?
Yeah, they flipped him.
Okay, so how long had he been an informant within your group before you were arrested?
Like a few months, like 2 or 3 months during the middle.
So they'd arrested him in America, and they'd basically presumably threatened him with quite a substantial prison sentence unless he kind of started to give them more people in the UK.
Yeah, because he was in his 30s and he had children to look after, so he really didn't want to go to jail. So he kind of flipped.
Wow. During that period, was he trying to find out more information about you as a person, to find out who you were, or was he just reporting on the regular chat you guys would be having?
Well, I mean, he would claim that he wasn't trying to reveal information from us, but I've looked into the FBI documents, and apparently what he says is that the FBI just asked him to continue as normal, except that they would install some piece of software on his computer to capture all the chat logs that people were talking about. That's what he claims. He just says like, okay, I didn't actually try to actively get you to reveal information. I was very careful not to reveal any personal information, but once you're talking to people, when you're talking to people, they were like family. You're talking to them all the time, like you're talking to them hours on day till like 3 a.m. in the morning. So there's always a chance of some information that is revealed about your life that could allow law enforcement to kind of catch you. Like for example, with the Jeremy Hammond case, which is the guy that gave us the Arizona Police Department, he was caught because he revealed in the chat room that he was arrested before, and he's currently in drug rehabilitation or something like that. And so that narrowed it down massively, because the FBI could just look at, okay, who's been arrested before and who's currently in drug rehabilitation, and that narrows it down massively for them. Yeah, so as I was saying, I was arrested. I was the first person to be arrested that was publicly known to be arrested, but I was the second person to be arrested in the group. I was 16. This was back in 2011. It was actually just after I finished my GCSE exams, which was really convenient, because if they arrested me before I finished my exams, then I might have missed some exams. But it was like a few weeks after. They kind of knocked on the door. And
what time of day was it?
I don't know. I think it was like 10 a.m. maybe. Something like that. Right, it wasn't too early in the morning. As I said before, I already quit the group actually, and so I bought a new laptop as well. So my old laptop with all the evidence, that was thrown away, and the hard drive was smashed into a million pieces. So there was nothing they could get on that. So I just had like a fresh laptop for the most part. So they opened the door. I think my little brother let them in. It was just like a typical knock on the door. But there was something suspicious about it that made me want to turn off my laptop. So I did. And so they came in, and I think they immediately knew that they were looking for me. And so they came into the bedroom and they searched the whole bedroom. They took any electrical devices, searched through all the clothes, all the wardrobes, and so on and so forth, to find evidence. And so I was just sitting there in the bedroom for 2 hours watching them do this, and they were trying to talk to me to kind of say, to reveal information or to try to verify it's me. But I would usually just say, I need to talk to a lawyer first.
Which is quite forward thinking for a 16-year-old.
Yeah, but I think I read online.
Yeah.
I think people were talking about it.
We're just going to take a quick break from this episode to talk about a sponsor, and that is NordVPN. Connor, one of the show's producers, with me here. You already use Nord, I believe.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, Ben. As you know, with this job, we travel a lot, which means going to hotels or coffee shops, restaurants, log on to public Wi-Fi so that we can work. The risk with that is it can harm your data and your security and your privacy. With NordVPN turned on, though, that absolutely protects you from logging on to any public network. It keeps all your data safe.
Fantastic. And you've been using it for a while, I believe.
Yeah, originally, again, it was mainly for travel. Again, with this job, we might go from city to city, country to country. It's great for booking hotel rooms at discounted rates because you can virtually change your location, which means, for example, if you're booking a hotel in the UK, but you're in the USA, you can log onto a UK website to get the local rates.
Fantastic. There's loads more benefits to NordVPN, and it's all for the price of a cup of coffee a month. Extraordinary Lives listeners can head over to nordvpn.com/minutes for a 20% discount on their sign up and 4 additional months absolutely free. That's nordvpn.com/minutes.
And were you scared at this point? I don't think I was scared specifically. I was more annoyed or pissed off.
Okay.
Because I knew like they wouldn't send me to jail because I was a minor. And at the time in the UK, no minor has been sent to jail under the Computer Misuse Act. That's changed recently. There was one case where it has been the case, but at the time, it hasn't.
Okay. And at this point, like, all your family, are they like, they presumably have no idea what you do in your spare time with the computer. So are they all just kind of like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I think they just thought I would play games on the computer.
Yeah.
I think they did know I was programming, but they didn't know I was doing any hacking.
Yeah. And that must have been quite a shock for them, I suppose, because it's almost like a dual identity going on when someone says to them, oh, this guy's been hacking several high-profile targets all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely unexpected for them. I think like my dad was shocked, and my mom, she doesn't know anything about computers. She doesn't even know what any of this means.
And so they got you, and then did they leave you in your house at that point, or did they arrest you at that point and take you with them?
So they took me with them to Belgravia police station to be interviewed. And so I got a lawyer who came, and we sat down in the interview, and I was advised by a lawyer, and they kept me overnight, by the way, because the interview was the next morning, so I had to sleep in the police cell overnight. They gave me this list of 84 charges they wanted to arrest me for, because they made each separate hack a charge.
Right.
And so there were 84 charges for like 84 different violations of the Computer Misuse Act for every single, hack we did. I was advised by my lawyer to give a no comment interview, which means I should reply no comment to every question. And they were very annoyed by that. They said, you should talk to us, because we can help. Maybe you'll get a more lenient sentence. And they were also trying to threaten me to say the FBI might extradite you to the US if you don't cooperate. So they were very annoyed. And it was a very strange interview, because if they want to charge you 84 times, they have to arrest you 84 times. And then that means they have to caution you 84 times. So they had to caution me for every single charge. And they said, when they say, you are now under arrest, you do not have to say anything, but if you don't say anything, it may harm your defense. They had to say that for every charge, but they only did it for half the charges, for 40 of the charges, because I think what happened was they could only hold me for 24 hours, so the time ran out.
Because they'd arrested you too much.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that must have been an intimidating thing, though, to see 84 different charges at 16. I mean, there must have been a sense of, when they were saying we could extradite you, did you believe that?
Oh, I thought that was a risk, but it seemed unlikely. Like, are they going to extradite a teenager? It's pretty unlikely.
Okay, so you've got these massive amount of charges. Presumably to make them stick, they had to prove you were T-Flow.
Yeah.
Because that's who they were trying to arrest, right?
Yeah. Because the main evidence was the chat logs. And in the chat log, it says T-Flow said this, T-Flow said that. And they were going through the chat log saying, what did you mean by this? What does that mean? And their whole premise was that I was T-Flow. So they had to somehow link me and T-Flow. They didn't really provide any evidence that I was T-Flow, actually. It was just assumed I was T-Flow. My suspicion was that GCHQ was involved. So GCHQ stands for Government Communication Headquarters, which is the spy agency in Cheltenham. What Snowden discovered back in 2011 was that GCHQ was actively targeting Anonymous, and one of the ways that they would discover people in Anonymous is that they would send them a link to a news story or something. For example, in one case, they sent someone a link to a BBC news story through something called a URL shortener, but they had their own URL shortener. So you would click it, and they would see your IP address, and then they could see, okay, they could subpoena the internet service provider to get your real name or your real address. And so that's what I suspect happened. And they didn't want to say that in the actual court case, because that's a matter of, if they reveal how they caught me, that's like a matter of national security, because they're revealing the spy techniques. Yeah.
And do you think they were surprised? Because presumably when they turned up to your house, they were going, right, we're arresting this guy for some pretty serious hacking offences, 84 different arrests, go to the house and it's a 16-year-old kid. Do you think they were surprised by that, or do you think they already sort of knew who you were?
Well, I think they must have known who I was, because I don't think they would have just came to my house. They must have done some kind of in-person surveillance or something like that, or more investigation.
What happens next?
I was released on bail after the 24 hours, and I wasn't charged with anything at the time because they needed more evidence, because I gave a no-comment interview. They didn't actually charge me with Computer Misuse Act. What they charged me was with criminal conspiracy. You don't have to actually charge them with the crime itself. You can charge them with conspiring to commit that crime. And that's a much easier charge to prove, because you don't have to prove they actually did that crime. They just have to prove that they talked about doing that crime, or they planned to do that crime. They conspire to do that crime. And they had the evidence of that in the chat logs. Eventually, distilled those 84 charges to 2 conspiracy charges. Actually, it was originally 4 charges. 2 of them were fraud charges, which were eventually dropped, because obviously we weren't doing fraud. There was no financial incentive.
So where did they come from? A misunderstanding, or?
I think, well, it was very kind of vague. It was like, we hacked into credit card information or something like that. It was like articles that could be used for fraud, but we didn't actually do any fraud with it.
Right.
So it was kind of like it was very vague.
Okay.
So they dropped it. One of the companies that we were accused of hacking was this company called, I think it was like something like Blackberg Security or something. It was like a US company. They weren't actually hacked by us. They just pretended to be hacked by us, and we played along with it, because it was just like kind of like a challenge to them, or like a way to get press for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you regretted that in the end.
Well, I don't think it made a difference.
Right.
It was
sure.
like it's one out of 80 people.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But it was still included in the legal charges.
Right. You managed not to serve any jail time. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah. There were 4 co-defendants in the case. One of them was the person I already mentioned, Ryan, who was kind of in our inner circle, but not the 6 core people. 2 other people, so 3 in total, including me, were part of the 6 core people in the group. So it turned out, like, out of 6 people, 3 of them were in the UK.
Oh, wow.
And no one knew that.
And you didn't know that either.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, wow.
So it was kind of like this huge coincidence. Yeah, so we were all in court together in the docks. We were 4 people. We never talked to each other. We just talked to each other online. The first time we met was in court.
That must have been weird, because you said earlier when you were chatting that they were like family at that point, talking to them to 2 a.m, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And then the first time you actually see each other must have been like, oh, you look like that, I look like this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've seen pictures of them online.
Right, after they were arrested.
Yeah.
Right. We're just going to take a quick break from this episode to talk about a sponsor of the show, which is BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online therapy and counselling service which matches clients with professionally trained therapists. I'm joined by Brian E, a producer of the show. I believe you yourself have tried therapists and counsellors.
Yes, I have over the years. I've actually tried and met a few different therapists over the years. And I think one of the things that's really amazing about BetterHelp is that you can find the person that fits you best. And I think that's really important, especially when you're talking about, life's challenges. You want to be chatting to someone who really gets you. And I think that's an amazing thing that BetterHelp has to offer.
Yeah, I think for me, there's that social awkwardness about once you've found someone, if it's in person, if you feel like you're not clicking, that sense of saying, I don't really want to come back just feels kind of horrible. Whereas if it's all done virtually, I suppose it makes it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think BetterHelp is also really affordable in comparison to perhaps private therapy or having to wait on waiting lists. So I think having the option to find the right person and it's affordable makes it like a really appealing option for therapy.
As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. Plus, as Bryony says, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/minuteswith. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/minuteswith.
Yeah, so we were sentenced. We all pled guilty because the evidence was overwhelming, especially given that there was an informant in the US. Yeah, because I was under 18, I didn't get a custodial sentence, so I didn't have to serve any jail time. I had what's called the suspended sentence, so I had a 24 months jail sentence suspended for, I think, 20 months or all the way around, which means that I don't have to serve the time unless I commit another crime. And then I was also sentenced to 320 hours of community service.
And the other guys, did they go to prison?
2 of the guys didn't really serve much jail time because in the UK, you only have to serve half of your sentence in jail and the other half is on probation. And also they were on electronic tag. Every day you're on electronic tag counts to half a day of your jail sentence. So I think like one of them only had to spend a month in jail and another one had to spend a few more months.
Okay.
But one of the people, Ryan, had to spend like a year or more in jail. But that's because he broke his bail conditions because he wasn't supposed to use the internet.
Right.
And then so he was arrested for breaching his bail conditions.
And so you said, so there was 6 core members, 3 of you in the UK, and then 1 that was flipped by an informant, and then 1 was the Ryan guy, is this right?
Yeah, and there was 1 guy that wasn't caught.
Okay.
Called AV Unit. And to this day, no one knows who he is.
Wow.
But he's still like, we chat to him on Twitter. You know, he's still like online on Twitter. He doesn't hack anymore, but he's still got a Twitter account, and occasionally like he pops up. But he's never been arrested.
Wow. So he was the only one. So his security must have been incredible if he was the only one of that whole group that managed to evade it, or in a country where they didn't have a partnership maybe. Okay. So when you met the other defendants in court, what was the age split like? Were they all similar to you, like 16, or were they? I mean, you've said you were the youngest, but what were their sort of ages like?
I think we were all on 21 when we did the hacking. So we were all very young. I was the youngest. The oldest, I think, was someone, I think it was 25. He was like ex-military. I think he might have been ex-military or something like that.
Wow.
Like 25. And he was actually someone who was pretending to be a girl the whole time. So everyone thought he was a girl.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
So the whole time you thought there was a girl in the group and you got into court and it was an ex-military guy?
Yeah. I'm not sure how many people actually believe that was a girl. Because like the way that he was communicating was over the top. Like he was smiley faces all the time. So it's like, and stuff like that to pretend to be a girl. So it's like, this is probably someone pretending to be a girl, not an actual...
And do you think that was just to be an extra level of anonymity?
Yeah, I mean, that's what he says. He's like extra security.
Wow.
He's not transsexual or anything like that. He's like a very straight ex-military person, but he was pretending to be a girl online.
At what point did you learn that one of your core group had been an informant?
It was, I think a year after I was arrested. It was kind of revealed to us. It was revealed to the lawyer as they presented new evidence in the case.
And how did that feel?
I don't really feel anything specifically about it. Like, if I only learned about it after I was arrested, I might have been more pissed off. But it was like a year later, and by then I had kind of moved on with my life. So it wasn't, that shocking to me. Or like, it didn't piss me off that much. But since then, he's been back online, and he doesn't have any like remorse for it. And that pisses me off more because he put people in jail, and not just us, but he put like not innocent people, but he entrapped people. So there was other people in the US. He would kind of tell them, hey, you should hack this, or here's a link to some vulnerable server. You should go and hack them. So like he was actually actively telling kids to hack stuff, and then gathering evidence on that, and then putting them in jail. And he's got no remorse on that. He doesn't feel he did anything wrong at all. Yeah.
Are you still friends with the other members?
Yeah, we're still friends with all other members, and we talk occasionally.
Except for the mystery guy that escaped.
Yeah, I mean, he's still on Twitter. Like, he tweets something once a year. And stuff.
Yeah, once a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so you served your time in a shop, but am I right in thinking that part of your sentence was that you weren't allowed to access the internet?
So that wasn't part of my sentence. That
Right.
was part of my bail conditions.
Right.
In case I go online to try and commit more crimes, or to try and delete evidence, or try to get back in touch with other members of my group.
I see. So once your bail was up, you were allowed to re-access the internet, have computers, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And do they do anything with you? Like, do they monitor you in a specific way afterwards or anything like that? Or are you free to just go back to your life?
So we had something called a serious crime prevention order, which is something they imposed on serious criminals. Not just hackers, but it might be like credit card fraudsters or like, pedophiles or sexual abusers. And part of the serious crime prevention order meant that every time I buy a computer, I have to inform the police. Every time I dispose a computer, I have to inform the police. And one of the conditions was that I was not allowed to delete my internet browser history. But they never said I couldn't use private browsing mode. So that was the easy way around it.
Okay. Okay, yeah, right.
I have to create it. I have to create browser. They said that I can't delete my internet browser history, but they never said that I have to create internet browser history. Yeah.
So it must be quite tricky for them when they're setting these rules out, because unless they have someone who's really deep in that world like yourself, there'll always be a way to interpret the words in a different way or, like you say, get a way around it.
Well, initially they tried to impose a condition that said, like, every time I use the cloud, I had to inform them. And what does that mean? Like, what does the cloud mean? What does it mean every time I use the cloud? So we challenged them on that, and they removed that.
What did they mean?
I don't think they knew what the cloud meant. I think but maybe they meant like if I was to use a server, if I was to set up an online server or something like that, they wanted to know about it.
You were all quite young guys, and you said that previous to this, there hadn't been much of a history of arrests for sort of computer-based offences in this world, like hacking. So
in the noughties.
In the noughties, yes. There'd been a big period where there hadn't been much, and that had given you a sense of security in terms of like people aren't really getting arrested for doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that you'd just done too much to the point where they were like, we need to make an example of this group because it's normalising this activity? Or do you think you did one specific thing that triggered a chain of events? Why do you think your LulzSec were made such an example of?
Well, I mean, we hacked into a lot of government organizations. Like we launched a denial of services attack against the CIA. We took the CIA website offline. And even though that didn't really cause any damage, that was very embarrassing to the US government. We leaked information from the Pentagon servers, for example. So, it was very embarrassing to the US government. So they wanted to investigate this.
When you think about people who get into this world, do you see a big distinction between reasons for doing it? Did you ever come across people in your travels through that kind of area of the internet who you could see were trying to do it for malicious reasons?
There's many different reasons for why people might hack. That spans the whole range of human motivation. Like ultimately, it's a tool, right? So you might do it for financial gain. You might just want to cause chaos, unleash world burn. You might want to use it as activism. It's a neutral tool that you can use it for positive or bad. Like the internet can be used for positive and negative. But for me, I saw it as a tool to redistribute power from where power is concentrated back to the masses through things like leaking information. Because I realized that information is a very powerful tool that can level the playing field between citizens and large corporations and governments.
And what about now? What do you do now?
So since I was arrested, I did a computer science degree in university, and then I did a PhD focusing on scaling cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And now I run my own kind of blockchain project.
And do you miss the hacking?
I wouldn't say I miss it specifically. I would just say it was fun, but I wouldn't want to do it again because I think I've moved on past that.
It's interesting because I feel like there was a burst of media around hackers, especially about Anonymous. It felt like there was a lot of stuff on TV about anonymous marches and anonymous hacks. I feel like that's died down a lot in recent years. Do you think that's because the media are less interested, or do you feel like less people are doing it?
I don't think there's less hackers. There's still hacktivism going on, but not necessarily so much under the banner of anonymous. There's like, it's not completely dead. There's still like some hackers under the banner of anonymous or LulzSec in, like, I think parts of Asia and Latin America, but not so much in the English-speaking world.
And two comments that I thought were interesting from the previous video we did together in the comment section. One of them was, there was quite a few people said this guy should be running an internet security business. Have you never considered that?
Well, that's quite a common like stereotype, like for hackers. Like they should, after they're arrested, it's very common for them to work for internet security companies or become a white hat hacker. And that's what a lot of people that are arrested in LulzSec Anonymous have done. But I was more interested in the creativity side of it. I was interested in programming and trying to create something or kind of research. And that's why I did a PhD. And that's why I've started my own kind of company.
There's obviously a stereotype about hackers that in TV and films and stuff that they're kind of loners, don't interact with people very well, don't like speaking to people, like staying alone in their bedroom. But throughout this whole conversation, like there's a thread through which your motivation always seems to be to help the masses, in your own words, redistributing power or authority back to the masses. Where do you think that's come from with you?
So I guess but also many other hackers, kind of believe in a world that's based on merit rather than status or wealth or power. Like if you have a good idea or you're skilled, you should be able to do something based on merit. You know, before blockchain technology, it's been very difficult to organize large groups of people, for example, for a activist purpose. For example, there's something called Assange DAO, and Assange DAO was this thing that raised $50 million for the legal defense campaign of Julian Assange. And, you know, tens of thousands of people participated in that in a completely decentralized way without using some centralized, you know, service like Kickstarter or something like that, which might have not been possible in the first place. Because remember, PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa blocked donations to WikiLeaks. And so by eliminating, you know, middlemen like PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa, it allowed WikiLeaks to raise money without going through these corrupt or untrustworthy third parties.
And the final thing I was just going to end on is one of the most common comments on the video we did with you before is this guy is a real life Mr. Robot. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, I mean, people say that I look like Mr. Robot, even though I don't, because he's Egyptian and Iraqi, so we're both Arabic. The interesting thing about Mr. Robot is one of the consultants for Mr. Robot was this guy called Greg Hoosh, which was part of Anonymous, and he helped to consult on the characters. So the Mr. Robot, the main hacker Elliot, is kind of based on a mix of different hackers. No hacker in specific, but he's kind of like meant to be like an average of different hackers.
And is it a more realistic type of hacking that you see in that show, or is it still kind of fantasy?
Yeah, Mr. Robot, the hacking in Mr. Robot is definitely very accurate.
Oh.
They actually hired hackers to come up with new hacks and exploits to use them in the show.
Wow.
Like everything you see there is actually real exploits that you can do.
Great. All right. Look, thanks so much for coming back and thanks for your time, Mustafa. It's really fascinating to hear your story. And it's an area of the world I think that everyone sort of knows exists but doesn't know much about it. So it's great to be able to sit with someone who can explain it so eloquently. So thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
So once we were in, I sneak out and hid and just put a sign on the door saying, please do not close this door. And just waited for someone to come and see the sign and go, oh, that's a rule. And so as soon as the guy comes out, there was a few people walked past it, but the guy came out, saw the sign and wedged the door open. And then I could get in.